Okay, it gives me absolute pleasure to welcome everyone to the third episode in the series of Your Digital Life. And this episode, we are going to be covering online risk and safeguarding in a little bit more detail than what we did in our last webinar. We are very fortunate to have Jonathan Taylor, who has joined us this evening from the UK. Many of you will be familiar with Jonathan. He joined us 3 years ago in person and ran a series of workshops throughout the day for both pupils, staff and parents. And obviously we are keen to maintain that relationship. Jonathan had quite a decorated career in the Met Police. And he has since gained his MSc in criminology and criminal psychology. He is one of, if not the leading UK consultant on social media and online safety. If you would like to follow him, you can follow him on LinkedIn. And there are two websites there, Be Safe Online and Online Safety for Schools, which you will also be able to follow Jonathan on. So it gives me absolute pleasure to welcome Jonathan this evening. The format for this evening is going to be a round robin of questions, which will get posed by myself, by Mrs. Eaton-Jones, and also by Mr. Goff. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first question. Ask Jonathan to obviously give us his expert advice and opinion on that. And then if there are any questions that wrap around it from the floor, please feel free to put your hand up or put a question within the chat. We'll go with that thread and then we'll move on to the next question. So I'm gonna kick off with the first question for you, John, which is something that's been in the news quite a lot recently, and it surrounds itself with what's called deep faking. So taking somebody's image, placing it onto a body. Sometimes, obviously, that can be unfortunately a nude body, and obviously the long-term implications of this can be quite severe. So I just wanted to ask you, what's your experience of this? What advice can you give, and how can we support the young people in our care with this kind of situation?
Yes, thank you, Duncan, and thank you for that introduction. I'm glad you recorded it. I can use it again. And good evening, everybody, or good morning, as it is 11:15 here in the UK. Imagery is one of the big areas for all online safety now, because every single device we have even has a camera. It's just too easy to do. And if you want to hurt somebody, insult somebody, or actually have far more criminal intent, then of course it's very easy to use somebody else's identity. Photo cropping, photoshopping, whatever you want to call it, it's just too easy to do. And the massive implications that has on the individual. My first reason, I mean, back in, believe it or not, 1996, I dealt with this. So just when not the internet was starting up, but certainly with social media, and that was on MySpace just as it started up. It was one of the first things that was ever going to happen, that you wanted to, or an individual wanted to hurt somebody else. But of course, the way that technology has evolved over the past 20 odd years is the fact that we now know that everybody's online identity, online profiles stay with us forever. And so you can imagine that what some individual believes is an instant hurt, an instant embarrassment, actually remains forever because of the implications of that inappropriate and sometimes illegal image that's been created. So this poor victim, and it happens a lot within schools because it's just so easy to do, it is instant, and they think that's it, end of. Well, no, it's not for the victim. So you've got the two aspects there. you've got how do we deal with the victim at the time, because we're talking about a criminal offence if it's an illegal image. So certainly we have to look at the technical side of where it's being posted, and therefore, is it a website? Is it an app? Which websites will have far more ability to take that image down than an app, for argument's sake. Now, when I talk about apps, you can talk about WeChat, you can talk about WhatsApp. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. It's very, very difficult, and I'll say this to parents, it's very difficult to actually get a website to take an image down, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Google. Very difficult, but it can happen. It takes time, but it can happen. Certainly when it is an illegal image. But then what's the implication for that child? Well, the child as a victim who's aware of it, then we automatically assume that the authorities are aware of the illegal image, or even the inappropriate image. So that's the school, that's probably the local authorities, etc. Not just in the UK, but of course in Malaysia too. So what has happened there? A lot of students will ask me, what do I do now then? This has been posted about me, what do I do now? One, you try and get the image taken down. Notice I use the word try. The other thing to do is then reverse this into, well, how do I create this positive online presence? And that is so important in this day and age because of cyber vetting for future. That's how it's found, or details or online profiles are found. That we introduce through blogging, through talking about experiences, talking about expertise. So they can talk about their, if you like, be open about it. So as a parent, we need to sit down with our children and say, well, what can we do if it happens? And prior to that, we need to sit down with our children and say, well, what are you doing? How are you behaving in the online world? We want people to be kind online. Safer Internet Day for the past however many years has always incorporated some sort of respect that we should be showing one another. And that's one of the big if you like, discussion points that we must always have. Schools, but above all, parents. Are we showing each other respect? Do we understand what the implications are? Do we understand what to do when something goes wrong? Are our children upstanders rather than bystanders and ignore it? Because it's all too easy now to create imagery, to create comments deliberately to hurt other people. So we need to be part of our children's and our young adults' life to make sure they're acting in a way that they are proud. They're proud of their own online brand.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Jonathan. I know that Mr. Goff has got another question to ask now. If anyone would like to obviously interject with any questions before we do that, feel free to raise your hands. If not, we'll move on to Mr. Goff's questions. Over to you, Mr. Goff.
Hi, Jonathan. Great to have you. I have a question. Can you give advice on how to handle hate speech and the fact that the homophobic, offensive, and racist language is the norm?
Yeah, again, it's pretty similar to what we were talking about with the hateful imagery that's created. And I'm glad you asked that, Andy, because one thing we must look at as parents is we've got to understand that our children will be using different platforms to us. So straight away with hate speech, it's slightly different in the sense of the platforms that are used. With the imagery, straight away, just to go back over that, you've got the Instagrams, you've got the TikTok, you've got everything else that can be, the image can be created, then used. With this type of the hate speech, where is that occurring? Well, yes, it can occur. We see it, even a lot of hate speech on Twitter. So we start to look at the platforms that are being used. But above all, we've got things like Discord, Twitch, Steam. These are gaming communities, gaming platforms that mainly, it has to be said that, if you like, teenage boys will go to, but there's a lot of girls there too. And then you've got the dark web as well, where you can go and have, and the dark web is something that is legal, but the content that's being used or being sold on the dark web is not. So we have to look at the platforms. So it comes back down to things like, well, what is my child doing? What are they doing with the device, the computer, the tablet, anything that gives them internet connectivity? But if you look at your students, your own child, my 3 daughters, they're, apart from work and a bit of study, they spend their life on the mobile phones. So we look at the mobile phone and say, well, on that cell phone, the mobile phone, what platforms? Well, they're exactly the same. They can use Discord, Twitch, they can use Steam. They can even access the dark web via a mobile phone. So when it comes down to things like hate speech, we want to know what platforms our child is using. What are they reading? Where are they going to? Because again, throwaway comments are very easy to do. Hate speech, slightly different. But what's interesting here, we've started with 2 questions and we're talking about criminal activity. And that's why I've always been an advocate of online safety, as it were. It's completely a standalone subject now to child safeguarding in schools. Child safeguarding is so important in schools. But the online world, we're talking about criminal activity. So even if our child has an opinion, a political opinion, they have to be very careful about what they say. That's in any part of the world. We've had that here in the UK. Certainly, we've had these big organizations, Black Lives Matter was created, and then as a result of that, we had a lot of right-wing activity that was going on within the UK, and very hateful speech on that. So the authorities can get involved. So should anybody actually see anything, it must be reported. It must be spoken to. We want our children, as young as they are or into their teens, we want them to feel able to talk to us, because they will be using different platforms. They will be using different areas of those platforms, whether that's social media, gaming, or bulletin type boards of old. We want them to come to us and say, and challenge things. This is wrong. This must not happen. And then together we can act by reporting it and making sure the correct authorities are aware.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. That's really, really powerful, isn't it, in terms of you know, being an upstander, and that's certainly something that we've been talking to the pupils about here at school. And now I know Johannes had a question there. It said, "Can you slowly rename the pages?" I'm not sure what you mean, Johannes. Can you feel free to put your microphone on and just talk that one through if you want?
Sorry, I was hurrying to type. I meant the platforms. I think I understood Discord in that context. It was 2-3 names which you mentioned. If you can just repeat them slowly, I'm not aware of them. Not
a worry. Again, this is something that Duncan and I talk about. The 3 main ones for what I refer to as gaming communities, because they were designed for a community where games can be discussed, games can be watched, etc. Discord, Twitch, and Steam. In fact, if I don't know whether Twitch. I've just written that in the chat. So those are the 3 main ones for boys and girls that they will go to. They can be used on devices. They were meant, but they are. Some people might remember what I call bulletin boards. Yahoo began those many years ago. I'm showing my age. That's what they've turned into. You can create your own little server whereby you can invite people in, and they could be quite specific. Now, bear in mind, they are closed groups. This is another big area for imagery and for comments. Closed groups. There's no law enforcement there. There's no local authorities there. There's no teachers there, parents there, because we don't know about them. So these boys, these girls will be in a closed group where they can say anything they like. So unless we're part of that world that's saying, well, what group are you in? Who's given you who's sent you this request? Why are you sending requests? And that is why it's so important. Again, if you then look at social media, well, straight away we'll all know about the Facebooks, we'll know about Twitter, Instagram, we'll know about YouTube. Well, there's all these different areas now where all these discussions. But then you've got the deep web, the dark web, whatever you want to call it, different areas. That's access. There's a thing called the onion route, and that's really where you go. You download. You've got to install an executable file for that, but it's free and it's legal. But the activity, unfortunately, on the dark web tends to be illegal.
Okay. Hopefully that will answer your question, Johannes. So maybe something to have a look into in terms of Discord.
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, our next question is going to come from another one of our staff here, and it's from our head of prep school, which is Mrs. Rachel Eaton-Jones.
Hi, Jonathan. It seems like a long time ago since you were here, but your knowledge has only increased, which is utterly terrifying for all of us. Johannes, I'm glad you asked that question, because those words aren't familiar to us. We all feel like dinosaurs in this, but all trying to protect our children. One of the questions that we've been asked is about the confusion about spam, phishing, different ways that security can be compromised. Have you got any advice on that, and how we can help the children protect themselves, as well as us help them in staying protected?
Most definitely, Rachel. Yes, certainly. When we talk about spam, and people my age, people younger, you guys all younger, everybody's younger than me these days. Spam tends to be the emails and the spam box on the emails that we never really go to, but we empty occasionally, or we might move things there. But we all know that what it means is advertising, or it might have an attachment that if you open is going to cause issues to your device or you as an individual. That's where phishing comes in. And phishing is basically a phishing expedition where it's trying to get details from you so as to get money. That's basically what it is. I've been a victim of it. Please don't think it's just because it's going to be children. I've been and on my device, basically they're very technical now. They're going to be asking you. But phishing now isn't just about emails. You can get it in a video. You can get it in a message on WhatsApp or on WeChat. The actual sophistication of these viruses and Trojans now is such that just the minute you accept a message, and some of you will know exactly what I'm talking about, where you get a WhatsApp message and a friend of yours is saying, look at my new YouTube channel, or look at me doing this, and bang, suddenly you get spam. Now, the word spam means exactly that. The fact it's a message, a video, or an email that you're getting that you weren't actually waiting for or expecting, so therefore the advice to everybody is, if you're not expecting it, you don't open it. If you open an email that's spam, that's fine. It's when you open the attachment on an email that's different to a message on WhatsApp or WeChat, or in a message you get on another platform. It's the minute you open the message. That's a shame. So you really want to be very careful when you receive messages and emails you're not expecting. And then we break this down to, well, what about our children? What about, because they tend not to use as much emails as we do. You do it when you're old. But the viruses are just as much as a danger to them. Now, when you look at viruses, you've got different types of viruses. You've got malware, which basically breaks down your device. But you've got spyware, which means webcam compromise. Webcams can be switched on remotely. And these are the ones, 78% of viruses that will hit a child's device will be spyware, which means they're going to be recorded without them knowing, no light on the webcam. And if it's on a device, where is their device? Probably in their bedroom. How do they get them? The vast majority come through filming, streaming films, not live streaming, talking like I'm doing now, but streaming of film. So if you go to Google and put in a film title, it could be anything, you put a film title in for that, you then will find a website that you can stream it and sit back, because it's not available on Netflix, it's not available on Amazon, it's not available because you just want to watch it. The minute you do that, they can be hit with that spyware, which means they're being recorded until that spyware is found. That means a video or imagery of them will actually be put out onto the internet. And we all know about cyber vetting and online identity for the future, especially if, guess where the computer is? In the bedroom. So we really must understand that spam, been around forever, which will be emails, but it's now in the form of messages, and also when you're actually searching on Google and you're actually looking for a film. So be very, very careful. So my advice will always be, don't open up messages you're not expecting. Don't open up email attachments you weren't expecting. And to children, please do not search for films, movies in Google. Use Netflix, use iTunes, use Amazon Prime, use that and speak to parents. Don't just search in Google. They run a risk of getting that virus, which is going to compromise their webcam.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Absolutely brilliant answer. And Johannes has said, obviously, the comment about, is it wise to open YouTube and search for films there?
Yeah. That's a good question. Again, Johannes, no, YouTube is owned, as you know, owned by Google. They will do as best as they possibly can to prevent videos. So there's not a very small amount of possible spam. The spam and phishing from YouTube comes within actually in the messaging below. If you see those comments and you'll see, oh yeah, go to this link, go to this hyperlink, but no, you don't want to go there. So advice there. So thank you, Johannes. YouTube videos are okay, but look at the comments. Don't activate really hyperlinks there. Please don't. Andy, VPNs, increased risk or not? VPNs, what are VPNs? Virtual proxy networks, or whatever you want to call them. All it's doing is hiding your IP. I speak a lot to schools in China, and they use a VPN out of Hong Kong because they can't use Google in China. So straight away, what they're doing is masking where they're actually doing a check from. That's all a VPN does. It hides where you're accessing the internet from. Is there an increased risk or not? Not really. Depends. It's all about behavior. So it's not about the device. It's not about the VPN. It's about what our children, young adults, and ourselves are doing. I'm a big advocate, and those of you that do follow me will see that I always say it's not about the device, it's not about the game, not about the platform, it's about what we are actually doing, how we're behaving, and that's what it's about. So VPNs, no, they're fine. The whole thing about the dark web is, well, dark web gives you 30 layers of VPNs, whereas if you use Norton, or you get one, or whichever one you use, that's the difference. So VPNs are fine.
Jonathan, before very quickly, I'm very aware, having been in a boarding house and seen boys regularly go on sites to watch movies. So that spyware definitely scares me hearing that. So I'll be investigating that more. But so you feel that's a really high risk of spyware being activated?
At the moment, the last research showed you've actually got 32% chance of actually getting spyware to your device just by searching for films because where you're actually going to watch the film, if you actually do a check, you can put any film title in you like, but make it sort of Fast and Furious, a genre for children or young adults, or boys or girls. You will see, if you think that, they are all what's called file sharing systems, which brings in Pollyanna's thing about Pirate Bay. Exactly that. These are file sharing systems. Some of us will remember some of the older ones, but that's where we used to get music from. Well, now it's movies, and it's not about the downloading, which is illegal. It's actually streaming. So if you stream a movie and it's got a virus, because anybody can attach a virus to a movie, even, believe it or not, me and a lot of people, then the minute the film is activated or streamed from a file sharing system, and there are many now, not just Pirate Bay, bang, you get hit with the virus, Andy. So yeah, they should not be used. Stick to Netflix, stick to YouTube, stick to iTunes, stick to Amazon Prime, or whichever. Stick to companies and you'll be okay.
Sorry, a very technical question. When that spyware the virus has happened, it's the videoing that they are able to do, does that stop the moment you shut off your camera, or they just got access to your camera for?
They've got access to the camera as long as the computer's on, which is another good bit of, thank you, Andy. So the advice I give, children are the worst, then young adults, and then us. Even I'm in my office now, and the amount of times I walk out of here in the evenings and leave my computer on. Don't shut it down. Don't put it into sleep mode. Don't put it into hibernation, because any virus that's within your device will continue to be used. So your webcam will film you as long as the computer is on, because even in hibernation mode, everything's working, including access to the webcam and obviously the internet. So yeah, shut every device down, phones, gaming devices, shut them down. And then what's good advice for the children? The minute you actually do that and then turn it back on, it does a self-diagnostic check to check that it's okay. So it's really important. Finish using it, shut it down, not just put it into sleep mode.
Fantastic. Again, wonderful advice. Now, we are going to open a can of worms that is social media.
Your microphone is off.
Can you hear me?
I can.
is muted.
Yes, I can, Duncan.
Okay. Yeah, so we're just going to get into that thorny subject now of social media. So I know there's been quite a few questions that have come from parents and different pastoral leaders. So Mr. Goff, I think you're going to kick us off with a kind of a synopsis of some of those questions and take us off on a bit of a social media pathway.
Me again. What tools do we have to protect our kids when they are so eager to be active on social media?
Right. Well, I've sent one of my resources to Duncan. I think he put it up there. How old should my child be when they first start using social media? Well, that's very, that's my opinion. But there's ages, there are guidelines. So we start with that straight away. We should stick to ages and guidelines. Unfortunately, there's no age or guideline for a device. So you can have a phone in year 1, 2, 3, 4. Shouldn't do. And in my opinion, and again, I've got a resource on that. But it's the same for social media. When you consider Fortnite is 12, everything else really is 13 and above. You might get FIFA, that's a gaming device, says 3+, but it actually says if you're under 16, you should have parental supervision. So first things first, it's about sticking to ages. If you've then got a situation that a parent says, well, hang on a minute, WhatsApp and WeChat, believe it or not, are 16, but they're very good messaging platforms, so I want to fine. Then yeah, you decide, but you've got to take more activity or involvement in your child's life, your social media life, their gaming life, or they know the platforms, etc. And as you're saying, Andy, well, what about this, the addiction that will come with that? Yeah, it will. Don't worry, it will. Now, addiction, I'd sometimes say, is the wrong word to use, because I would like to refer to things like drugs, alcohol type addictions. But yeah, it is an addiction, because we as adults, we will always suffer from FOMO, the fear of missing out. The first things we do in the morning will be turning on our mobile phones, and we'll be checking them like everybody else every 2 minutes. But it's more so with a child or young adult because of what they're doing. The way they use the internet to gain access is different to us, because they want social media, they want games. So straight away you start looking at Snapchat and TikTok. They're the two main ones that they get drawn into, as well as the Instagram, and some of us will be still using Facebook, as Rachel was saying. And then you've got the games. You've got all forms of games, the driving games, the football games. They're designed to keep you in there. They're designed to have you, they're strategy games. Fortnite Battle Royale can be as long as maximum 3 minutes, but you want to do it again. So what do we do? How do we break that? That's very difficult. But then we've got to put in things like, you get in the younger your child, the more chance you've got. You're not going to change a 16, 17-year-old boy or girl's social media or gaming habits now. That's going to be very difficult. But if you've got a child, now, please don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying a 9, 10, 11-year-old, let them use them straight away. You'll know when the time is right as a parent. But put a contract in place. It can only be used on a Friday, 6 till 7. It can only be used when the room is tidied. It can only be used downstairs with me present. You can't use it in. You can put these things in place to try and create what I call online resilience. We want our children to be resilient. Now, the way we're going to be doing that, it's not difficult, but what we need to have first of all with our children is this cycle to reduce risk. And one of the risks is addiction. So first things first, as a parent, we need to use or understand the apps and the platforms they are using. We need to gain knowledge. We then have to give or educate our children to influence their behavior. And it's only done by having this pattern of usage, gaining knowledge, educating, influence their behavior, which will build a resilience and reduce that risk. One of the risks being addiction. But this is a cycle, because there'll be a new game, there'll be a new platform. So you've got to keep that involvement the whole time. So that's the personal involvement as a parent. You've got the technical side to it as well, which will be connection to the internet, because they can't use them without the internet. So you can limit that by going through your own server, speaking to the company that provides. So you can actually switch off or give it times. I know we can in the UK, and pretty certain you can do that in Malaysia too. So you can use the technical side to it, but above all, parental involvement. Speak to them. Be this open parent that says, come on, I'm here to listen. The younger the child, the easier it is, but certainly you've got the personal touch, but you've also got the technical touch, which means you actually can go into your modem, your provider, and say, for these devices, I only want connection between, which will be your Nintendo switches, between, say, 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. So you can reduce the amount of time they're using.
Jonathan, just to nip in there with the parenting and boundaries. You know, I know one of the biggest struggles with parenting, and I'm dreading bringing up my daughter and son as teenagers, is that what other people's boundaries are, and fighting that, the fact that some parents are very liberal and some aren't, and just where do you meet?
That's again, Andy. Yeah, I've just literally come up before I spoke here. I was speaking to year 5s and year 6s in the UK, and I've said, well, one of the big things here is we're all different. We are all different. You know, I've mentioned that already about ages. So straight away, parents need to talk to parents, because you might have a sleepover, or you might invite children or young adults over after school, and they'll sit down to do homework together. But of course, if one child is allowed access to Grand Theft Auto or Fortnite, depending on the ages, but your child isn't, then you've got to have these open conversations with parents. Say, look, John's really pleased to be coming over. He can't wait. They're really good friends at school. Can I just say that my son doesn't use devices yet? He doesn't use Fortnite. So I'd much rather, when my son is at your house, that your son isn't allowed to use it. That's a very difficult conversation to have, or with girls, because they tend to be the far more narcissistic of us all with their selfies, far more than boys. So my daughter doesn't use TikTok. I know your daughter does. Can they not use it when they're at your house? Very difficult questions, but you have to have them. We are parents after all. If you were sending your daughter or son swimming to a friend's house, you'd tell them if they couldn't swim. So we've got to look at it that way as well. Now, I just see Johannes is again coming about the technological side, the net nannies, etc. Yeah, if you want to use technology there, you certainly can. They will cost some money. I mean, at the moment, the top one is a thing called Qustodio, Qustodio. And there's many, Net Nanny, there's Circle with Disney, there's Moby Clip, and Kaspersky with Safe Kids. Many technical things that you can use. Microsoft do one as well. So you can use the technology that way. You can pay money for it, ranging from, pound-wise, £10 up to 200. But for me, as we're talking, Andy, it's about talking. It's about parent to parent, parent to child and young adult, to really know what they're doing. And that way you can come up with that plan together to have an open house about online behavior and online usage.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm very conscious of time and really like to open it out to the floor. I know that we have got more questions here, but I just wanted to get Mrs. Eaton-Jones. She's got a really pertinent question which kind of dovetails on the back end of that, about gaming. So if Mrs. Eaton-Jones can ask that question, and then I'd really like to go to the floor for any questions from parents that they feel haven't been answered or they'd like to ask in more detail.
Thanks, Duncan. Actually, I suppose it's I'm going to combine both of those, the two that I was next going to ask. It's those top tips, and I think, Jonathan, you've given us some really good advice about how we can interrupt the addiction, which you say rightly isn't. You would prefer to use that as a different term, because there are good and bad not so much bad. We don't want to say that it's a bad place. Technology and social media is here with us, but I suppose it's a couple of top tips about how to combat the effect of social media and on a child's perception of their body image, or on their development of an intense desire. Let's not use the word addiction. Intense desire to continue gaming, because I think the technical side is scary for us all, to know that there is so much out there. But the reassuring thing is that there are often sort of 2 or 3 really helpful rules which are just about parenting anyway, which might help us help us all. What do you tend to share with people? Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. It's interesting when we break it down, and what research shows us is that as we all start as gamers, believe it or not, children as young as 7, 8, 9 and 10 as they start playing games, whether using the internet or not. As we start as gamers on little things. And then as we get older, I say we, as children get older and they get to the ages of year 5, year 6, and the device usage, they start, and girls tend to be far more into the camera usage for selfies, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. And boys will start, and some girls obviously, that does cross over, but far more boys will go towards gaming and the gaming platforms. So we start to look at, well, what are these risks and what are the dangers? What's the possible exploitation? Grooming, stranger danger, comes in both fields of social media with the imagery and also with the gaming. And then you start to look at, well, breaking that down and why? Well, within social media, as you touched on, Rachel, there's this, they want more friends, more contacts, they want more likes for their pictures, for their videos, and they start to have this, what's called self-comparison about their own identity, their self-image, and certainly their self-identity. And if they're not getting the acknowledgement, then there's that worry that, well, why me? Why am I being isolated? Why does nobody like me? They tend to forget it's just an image. It's just a picture that some people may not have seen. But certainly there's a massive amount of pressure. There's all the filters that can be used to change your body image now. So yeah, we use this word, and I was only talking about it last night, and it's about, we've never been a more narcissistic community than ever before, and it tends to be the young children here and young adults who are forever taking pictures of themselves, wanting other people to comment them. We suffer from that as well. Duncan was just talking to me yesterday about something I posted on LinkedIn. He said he looked at it and he liked it. That made me feel good. But it tends to be that the only time we feel good, but that's automatically taken away by a negative comment or even no comment at all. So this fear of missing out really, really does exist. We call it FOMO. I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of that. And what we then must understand is the problem we have with a child and a young adult is they cannot disconnect. That's socially damaging. They have to be part of their online community, which hopefully will be true friends, but sometimes it's beyond that. It's the amount of contacts on Snapchat. And it's the same in the gaming world, because in the gaming world, we add on that other side of it, which is the possibility of not understanding money because they want to make online purchases, V-Bucks, or that are used for Fortnite. They forget about it. They just buy more armory to be selected more and more. So it's about that popularity. So you've got this self-comparison within gaming with boys and girls, and you've got self-comparison with girls and some boys within social media of TikTok and Snapchat. Because let's not forget about it. Things like YouTube, things like Snapchat, things like TikTok, they all allow live streaming, and there's monetization in that, as there is in Twitch, Discord, and Steam. You can earn money because you've got followers. So you can see this drive to use it even more. And what you touched on, Rachel, as well, about this screen time. I talk about good and poor screen time, not good and bad. Because if they're spending a long time on it, they're going to be tired, which is going to create mistakes. So when I talk about top tips, and I do have 10 top tips, which I give to young children, or young users, I should say, as well as parents. For parents, it's about being involved, creating contracts, adhering to age restrictions, checking contacts, etc., and limiting that time, as we discuss. And Johannes mentioned some technical side to it. There's also the physical side of contracts and speaking to our children. And to children and young adults, keep asking. Be careful what you're doing. Be careful what you're saying. Limit your time. My daughters have been, well, my youngest has been doing A-levels, and she sets little timers, and there's lots of apps you can get, building a forest, and you can limit the amount. So that's the conversations we want to have, so they can understand the reasons behind being concerned about time consumption, scrolling, looking at TikTok videos, etc. So keep a corridor of communication open and keep discussing it. Don't ever stop.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that's really good advice, Jonathan. And I also I think, as you're saying, it's like deconstructing. So talking about FOMO and sharing those moments as a parent when you have felt this feeling because somebody hasn't, and your child, your young adult who lives at home with you or wherever, or boarding school, can say to you, oh, don't be ridiculous, it's just they won't have liked it, you know, but there's that sharing, so you can identify that this is a shared emotion, it's not particular to them, whereas a lot of teenage life can feel so intense, as if they're the first people to ever experience this horror and challenge, but actually sharing, and as you say again, we always say again and again, keeping those lines of communication open, so you can talk about the good and bad.
I mentioned to Duncan yesterday, and this I'm aware of the time, there's this thing called, you know, we all know vulnerability, and that every child, young adult, ourselves, we're all vulnerable. But in the online world, there's this, what I call an online amplification of the vulnerability. That can be through things like special educational needs, because children with special needs don't have an area they can go to. So straight away, if they're on a spectrum, or whether it's autism, Asperger's, ADHD, then they can be, say, they won't have the correct perception of where they are or what a friend or contact is. There'll be less supervision, excessive use, inappropriate behavior. And if they're left alone to their own devices for that, then you can see how their vulnerability can be amplified because of a lack of parental involvement. So that is crucial.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Now, I know Shazana's a really good question here. What about a recommended list from the school for kids on best practices when gaming or using social media? I'm going to share with you now something which all parents will get either tomorrow or early next week. Jonathan has kindly shared some resources with us about mental health and well-being, what to have or when to have, what age to have your first mobile phone, what age to use social media, so different types of social media, also what parents can do. It also gives me the opportunity, we've got a digital charter which the pupils in both the prep school and the senior school have been working on over the last term, even the term before. And this is something that we're aiming to launch in a few weeks' time. And it will be a central theme to our next webinar, which is going to be on the 9th of June. So we're going to be focusing on digital citizenship, common sense media. We're going to have a deep dive into what that looks like. And also in the interim period of time, again, this will go out in my letter and the newsletter tomorrow, but there is the Digital Wellness Day, which is an international day, which is May the 7th, and it's all about rethinking your relationship with technology. So there is, we are going to share some information and resources with pupils in school. Obviously, we do a great deal through our wellbeing program as well, and PHSE. So we are doing a reasonable amount, I think, but it's also, we're trying to drive it from the pupil perspective. And Shazana, definitely there will be more resources coming from us in terms of best practices, and hopefully that will come across within lessons as well. But I'd really like to open it out to the floor now, to any other questions that people may have that they'd like to ask within this context. No problem, Shazana, thank you. Or do I go back to another question I've got?
I would.
TikTok, here we go. Anton Baronier, TikTok just got into trouble in the UK. Does Jonathan know any more details? Can you elaborate why they've got into trouble in the UK?
TikTok are forever in trouble. Why? Because it's owned by a Chinese company. That's not me having to go at the Chinese. It's the fact that about data. Data is the main thing they got in trouble over. And of course, the way it's being used, the fact that there's no moderation of it. Now, they say there is, and we say there isn't. So TikTok, it's about data. That's why we had the 5G mast here in the UK that was put on hold. What I'd say about, I've just done actually a 10-minute webinar on TikTok. I'm a realist, Anton, when it comes to any platform. It's a choice we make. If we're going to use TikTok, then we must understand that it's going to be your details, your data is going to be onto a server somewhere. But that's the same for Facebook, that's the same for Instagram, for WhatsApp, for WeChat, that's for absolutely anything. So what we must look at is the fact that TikTok got into trouble because of the fact that they wouldn't actually change things when it came to data. That's the main thing. But TikTok is also used having big issues with live streaming, that it's not, you know, an awful lot of people are using TikTok for live streaming for big issues of everything that we've talked about so far. So, you know, but TikTok used to be Musical.ly. And when it was Musical.ly, it was that simple little lip syncing video recording for basically young girls. And it was used far more in primary schools. So yeah, it's one of these things where it progresses. You can now have minutes worth of videos. It's monetization in it. It is data grabbing, and it won't change, and it will not go away. It'll remain one of the most popular, or the most popular areas for live streaming in the UK and probably world at the moment. So yeah, it's just the way it is, and data is the big issue there. Will Apple's change the privacy block for favorite apps of our children and make them go bonk? Yeah, Apple's changed the privacy block. This is the whole thing that, again, in the UK, I've answered some of that. I am a realist. Whether you use Apple, Google, Facebook are the three main gatherers of information and data. They give our data away free. But we make that choice because in terms of conditions, they tell you this. And it was the same for this encryption on WhatsApp. They've decided to put that in place as well. So you've got the whole situation with Apple. It's all about money. Now, as long as we accept that as users, then we can limit the amount of information we are giving away, the amount of data we give away. But certainly, if we go back to children, and again, I mentioned this, Duncan, Johannes has reminded me here. One of the big issues I have with it for children is GPS and how that is used and how that is gathered. You know, how about imagery? We touched on it with Rachel. The fact that if you take a selfie with a mobile device, and that's an Apple phone, say, but you don't send it, you don't distribute it, you don't message anybody with it, you just take a selfie, but you're connected to the internet, Apple will take the selfie and put it on their cloud. Not your cloud, you're not your little area of storage. The same with Google because of Gmail. So you've got location, you've got imagery, everything that gets grabbed, which is why we need to sit down with our children and say, look, be aware of this, then you make right choices. And I always use this phrase, making the right choice. Making the right choice is the most important thing to do because it protects our online identity, our online profile, and everything for the future, including when we apply for jobs. Because job selection, university selection, especially after what we've had in the pandemic, a lot of that's going to come down to our online identity. Yeah, so we want everything to be private as much as we can. Malicious content online about our kids. Where do we turn first? It depends. If I separate the inappropriate to illegal, and the reason I do that is malicious content online about our kids. If it's malicious, it could be illegal. If it's illegal, you report it. You straight away, you go to wherever that platform is. As I said at the start, obviously the companies like Apple, like Facebook, like Google will or can act, and you'll get more response from them. Takes time, but you will get response. If it's if it's something like WeChat and it's on there now, some of you must say, I have no idea what WeChat is. Well, WeChat is just very similar to WhatsApp, based in Asia, and it's Chinese. You'll get no response, and they won't bother with it. Same with things like the apps and sites like Discord, Twitch, and Steam. They're very large, but we're only talking about a few people who actually control it. So you might not get that response. So, but you do, you know, straight away, if it's free about your child, bring in the school. I mean, Marlborough College in Malaysia, people like Duncan, Rachel, Andy, and Magnus, you've got people there who know so much. Turn to the school. You're going to need that support. So that's part of that corridor of communication that remains open between you, the school, and obviously your child. But yeah, do turn there. So you've got some great experts within the school, and they are concerned just as we are as parents, because don't forget, you know, I've got children and I still talk to the school there. Let's help to have location switch.
I'm so glad you were saying that. I was just hovering over my microphone to say, talk to us. We need to know. I cannot say we can wave a magic wand, Buzz, but we'll do all we can. And as we all know, sometimes there are little bubbles of energy around an issue that sort of move from form to form or year group to year group. And the sooner we know, and we'll work with you to try and ease the situation as soon as possible. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was literally hovering with my finger on the microphone. Yes, we'll help.
Yeah. Johannes, you're keeping me busy. Yeah, I'm strong about this. The only reason I really will use my location is when I use Waze and I've got a GPS to use my sat nav on my car. Other than that, I don't use Find My Phone, Find My Friend, like children and young adults will do. So if they don't drive a car, why do they use or need location or GPS switched on? Well, the reason they want it is because of snap maps. It's so they can see what their friends are up to. Now, that's me being a bit flippant. Now, the facts are, as a parent, you might want to know where your child is. And I totally get that when there's a boarding school. So you might want it. But when they're safe, so when they're at school, when they're at home, they don't need the GPS on, and I am aware of the time. If a child, young adult, is using Instagram, is using social media, and they post from their mobile phone, and their GPS is on, and they're sitting at home, anybody in the world can do a search for online profile names using free software on Instagram and saying, oh, look, there's at John Taylor. I like his image. Where's he sent that from? It'll show you straight away. And the vast majority of children will use their device to post on Instagram. We're at home. So they're going to actually very easily find out where a child lives. So when a child is at home or is somewhere safe, like a school, etc., there is no need to have their GPS or location on. So tell them, have it on when you, as the adult, decide it's necessary because they're traveling home or, you know, for medical or safety issues. Totally get that. When they're at home, switch it off. So they can still post on Instagram, but they're not giving away their location.
That's wonderful. Johannes, don't apologize about that. That's the exact reason why we've opened it up as a Q&A. And I would encourage both yourself and any other parents, if you've got any more questions, then please contact us in school and do ask those questions, because I'm a parent as well. I have younger children and I've got an older child as well, and I've seen him go through his teenage years. So I kind of, you know, I've experienced it, I've lived it, but it doesn't mean to say that I've got all the answers, but I can certainly empathize with all of the comments that have been made. I just wanted to highlight, obviously, the resources, and thank you very much, Jonathan, for sharing such excellent resources. As I say, I will signpost these for everybody, and I just wanted to remind people, really, I just wanted to thank Magnus. Magnus has been on the call. He's been in the background for technical reasons.
Not technical, just happy to listen.
But we had 2 calls open in case we had more people. Thank you to Rachel for her time and energy and questions, and I know her door is always open. Andy is a fantastic deputy head who cares passionately about looking after your children, and as an experienced HM as well, he's lived that over the last few years. And obviously myself in my role. Anton, great question. Does the content reach the kids? This content is available on the school YouTube channel. We are going through with children through a whole range of issues throughout wellbeing and through PHSE. We are hatching plans, obviously, for Jonathan to be speaking to the pupils, but obviously we're just going through that process at the moment. Yes, we are educating our pupils. We do use the Common Sense Media platform a lot. That's why the next webinar is going to be a deep dive into all aspects of that across the wellbeing curriculum. And yeah, we really do want to give you guys confidence, and I'd love to obviously use the friends of MCM as well to share that information and to gain absolute confidence that we are covering all of those bases as well. So yeah, if you do have any further questions, do feel free to reach out to us. Please do follow Jonathan, his website, what he posts on social media. His LinkedIn is absolutely fantastic, and it's a constant source of information for us. We're on just after 7:05. I'm sure many of you have got to go and eat some tea, get children to bed, and I certainly have to do the same. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for your time, effort, energy, and enthusiasm. And we look forward to staying in contact with all of our parental body, and we will speak to all of you soon. Thank you so much.